What's always amazed me about Nikola Jokic is how he becomes what the team needs from him. He was once a liability on defense, so he gets in shape. There was a time earlier in his career where he'd have games where he'd take 4 or 5 shots because in his eyes, I think he thought, well, I'm selfless. I want to pass the ball and make my teammates better. But then he realized, oh, wait, to be selfless, it means to score more. That's what I need to do to help my team actually win games. And since then, he's won 3 MVPs, 1 Finals MVP, 1 championship. And here we are with it happening all over again. The Nuggets lose key guys. They're younger. They're a little bit weaker on offense, especially to start the season. And here he is, 29.7 points per game, a career high. Lack of shooting on the team, shooting 56% from 3, a career high. Number 4 in the league in scoring, number 1 in assists, number 1 in rebounds. 7-3 Nuggets. They've won 5 in a row. Jokic is posting stat lines that nobody has ever done in the history of basketball. Adam, is this the best version of Jokic that we have ever seen?
There's no question it is. I mean, because he hasn't lost anything. I mean, it's not like he's not doing anything he was doing before. He's not doing any of those things at a lesser degree or lower level than he was ever doing them before. But to your point, what he has increased has been his three-point shooting, which, by the way, I don't think he's going to shoot 56% all the time. But you mentioned something interesting about him being a reluctant scorer and having to learn. I think that was the toughest lesson he had to learn over the course of his ascension to MVP status, was exactly how you framed it. Sometimes the selfish play is actually passing, put pressure on the defense. That was a tough hump, I think, for him to overcome. Jamal Murray's injury a couple of years back, I think, pushed him to become more aggressive as a scorer, and he got comfortable doing that. But I always think that he's been a 33% career three-point shooter, and he's been a 40% career shooter in the playoffs. And I always think it has to do with, when he gets to the playoffs, his mind frame is, I have to shoot. Teams are going to pack the paint. They're going to make adjustments. I have to come ready to shoot. This year, and I think it was game number 1 against the Thunder, he kind of looked around at the scenario and said, I'm going to have to shoot this year. And mentally, he's been in a zone where he's anticipating shooting. He's prepared for it, and he has a quicker trigger on it. So I'm not surprised that he's shooting well. I'm surprised he's shooting 56%, but I'm not surprised he's having a career year, because I just think that he kind of internalizes what's needed, puts his mind towards it, and is just more focused on whatever that target is.
Is that something Michael Malone or members of the front office in the past have steered him towards doing? Like, was he pushed to score more this season? Was he asked, like, hey, you're going to have to shoot more, you're going to have to score more? Or does he kind of assess the situation himself and he realizes, okay, this is what I need to do?
I don't think he's had to be pushed at all, to be honest. You know, Michael Malone, early on, we're saying 2018-19, he would often say an aggressive Nikola is the best Nikola. We want him to be aggressive. So there would be like public comments, but I don't think the team ever questioned. Michael Malone would always say, Jokic feels the game better than anyone else. I don't need to tell him. He sees it. And, you know, sometimes we'll talk about different things, but he sees what's going on. And I just think it's his own feel for the game and understanding. And by the way, the European style of game doesn't usually have scorers at volume. It's just more of a team game. The defensive rules allow for it a little bit more. So I think it's even, you know, in somewhat cultural or experiential, where most of his life scoring was a bad thing. And the guys that were too aggressive, that was a negative thing. The NBA is not that way. I think he had to learn that lesson over the first 5 years or so of his career, but we're well past it. And now he would love to pass every time down court. That's his nature, but he understands the situation and he's more aggressive than ever. He plays like Shaq. When he gets a guy who can't guard him, I mean, he forces the double every possession because he is going right into the chest of him. So I think he's just over that hump. And that was a battle he fought years ago, and he's on the other side of it now.
I mean, you mentioned he played like Shaq. If he wanted to, he could score 40. He just overpowers every single team. And that Dallas has a lot of size. Like, obviously, Lively's out, but you still have Gafford. Luka is big and strong, but Jokic is just too strong, too big, too wide, and too skilled on top of all that for anybody. It doesn't matter what you do against him. And with Jokic adding the three-point shot or improving the three-point shot, at least, you know, through 10 games so far this season, as you said, doubt he's going to shoot over 50% for the season. It's just unreasonable to anticipate that. But you brought up something interesting, though, how he shoots better from 3 in the postseason because he has the mind frame of, well, I have to shoot now. It's an interesting thought there with somebody like Jokic, that it's the approach going into games, thinking about what he's going to have to do, and then he does it. That's always been the way he is with everything he does. It makes me think about when I interviewed him in 2016 or 2017, it's like one of the few interviews he's done in his career, like one-on-ones. I don't even know how many he's done since then. But I remember I asked him, I was like, in regards to his passing, I was like, have you always been able to just put the ball like where you want to put it? Like, have you ever practiced passing? And he's like, no, anytime I want to pass the ball, I look in the direction and it goes where I want it to go. And it's kind of like that when it comes to his overall game. If he wants to do something, it feels like it just happens. It just manifests into reality for him.
I had no idea. So that quote is something over at DNVR we've talked about a lot. The ball goes where I want it to go. I had no idea that was a Kevin O'Connor quote. That's incredible, man. We always reference that one because it is true, man. Like it's his floater. It's everything. The ball just goes where he's like, oh, I want to shoot it. There, it went in. I want to pass it. That went right to the spot. Like, it's just something innate about him. And it's the same with his touchdown passes. He threads the weirdest needles on these like 60-foot passes. And you think, how did he do it? Well, because the ball goes where he wants it to go. And he just has this magic touch that is always on the money. It's special about him. And his brain is incredible. His touch is incredible. And you combine those two things together, and literally every basketball skill is some combination of touch and seeing the floor, court mapping. And he just has both in spades.
Well, this season, he's averaging 115.8 touches per game. That's a career high for him. He never logged over 102 before. That doesn't mean he's dominating the ball. He still has a low average dribbles per touch, average seconds per touch. He still gets rid of the ball quick. That's all the same. It's just 13 more or so touches per game. One of the things that's been interesting with Denver this season, in part due to Jokic, he's shooting over 50% from three. Denver is second in the NBA in three-point percentage, but last in three-point attempts per game. Now, with Jokic, his presence and obviously his majestic passing ability, that creates open shots for guys. But with the touches he's getting, the Nuggets cut a lot around him. They're number one in the NBA in cuts per game on synergy, averaging 12.5. That's first ahead of the Warriors, who are routinely first in that number. How does cutting shape Denver's offensive spacing, Adam?
Incredibly. I mean, and they are a phenomenal cutting team. I think this is by far the best cutting team that Denver's had. And it's two things. One of it is proper spacing. So when people talk Denver has a lack of shooting, they don't necessarily have a lack of spacing. They have guys that can occupy different spots and do different things, put the ball on the floor, or what have you. You mentioned the touches. One of the reasons he's getting more touches and one of the reasons it's effective is he's surrounded by guys that don't know what to do other than cut off of him. It's almost like the limitation creates the strength. So Julian Strother catches a swing pass, but he's not open enough for a shot. Maybe he has a lane to attack a closeout. Maybe he has something else. But most of the time, if nothing's wide open, it's, all right, get the ball back to Jokic. Like, keep it going. So Jokic will touch the ball, get it out of his hands. Nothing's open, gets back to it, touches it, something else. And the more times you do that in the half court, something's going to open up. You almost never go 24 seconds, 3 or 4 touches to Jokic and nothing came of it. Something will come of it, but nobody is breaking the chain. You're constantly, even if you get a defensive rotation and stop, you're going to have to make another one and then another one and another one, and eventually you break down. And what makes good cutters on this team? Russell Westbrook, first of all, has been a phenomenal cutter. His speed has been something Jokic hasn't really had before, a player that can hit the gap as quickly as he can. Christian Brown has great size. He's like a tight end, like charging down the lane. So if he is open and he gets the ball, you have to not just meet him with height, but you have to meet him with strength because he's going so hard at the rim. And then Peyton Watson has that long wingspan. He's long, he's athletic. These guys are all, if you think about it like a quarterback, he's got different types of receivers he can throw to at all times. And they're so good at spacing, but then cutting on time. Because again, they can't do anything else at this moment. So if all you can score off of is cuts, you're going to really focus on how to cut. And that's what the Nuggets are doing right now.